All right, yeah. Story in Your Eyes, perhaps being the most complicated times for Savior Sect, coming off of the four-person lineup into what would become the duo of Anastasia and myself. This is no doubt going to be the longest story. So hang back, grab yourselves a beer, and yeah. All right. So Dave and Dexter were both of them were good for their word, and they took off and disappeared. So this kind of left the band without a drummer and without a guitar player, and it was only me on bass, who fortunately was the songwriter all this time, and singing. Okay, now there was a very confused period after this breakup. These guys went off to form their own thing, and it was uncertain whether Anastasia and myself would stay together. Now, during Suicide Cult, during that period of time of recording those songs, and I had started to become more and more aware of Anastasia. And this was something that was bound to happen, as when I set out to do this band, I was looking for something that I was interested in to begin with. So by the time of Story in Your Eyes, she was starting to light my fire, and it was kind of a bonfire at this point, threatening the forest, and which it would later ignite down the line. But it became for me not so much of a musical endeavor at this point, but I was pretty emotionally tied at this point, and it became very, very, very crucial to me that I keep Anastasia on board with Savior Sect, because I had no intention of losing her. So what I did was to very quickly go out and buy an 8-track analog Portastudio. This is before the days of the digital, or at least something that I could afford if it wasn't totally that. But everything at this point still pretty much cassette. This 8-track recorder had a cassette snapped in there, and you could fire away with multiple tracks, figuring I would need this because in this way I could resurrect the drum machine that we used in the later half of the '94 version of God, and once more bring that into play with Savior Sect, because we didn't have a drummer now. But if I had a beat and a bass, I could write a song. All right. Problem being at this point was we did not have a guitar player. Okay, and this was pretty tragic, because coming off of Dexter's amazing abilities on the guitar, there was just no prospects in sight who would want to come down, at least I felt, and jam with this ancient drum machine that did a repetitive drum pattern and did nothing else. You could change the patterns, but they did nothing but give you a straight repeating beat. Alright, so I was used to this though from recording with God, and I was able to, we had a 4-track recordings in those days. With Savior Sect, I saw the potential of multiple instruments being put down. We had the 4-track, it was kind of, we had the bass, guitar, vocals, and the drum machine, and you could bounce the tracks down, but I wanted an initial run of tracks, of multiple tracks, to be able to throw down more instruments. Now, an interesting aside from all of this before I come back was that in '94, I had mentioned during the suicide cult times, during that particular era, I had gone on vacation and I went down to Florida to visit Omen from Apostle Void, and we were hanging out down there. Now, he didn't take too much time off of work, so I rented a car and I would drive around the Florida area looking for things to do during the day while he was at work. Now, what was interesting was I decided to drive to Tampa because I was a big vinyl collector in those days. And there was supposedly, I can't think of the name of the store right now, but there was supposedly this really good metal record store, okay? And I was looking for all kinds of vinyl back in those days. So it was in some shopping center in Tampa, went in there, looked around, found it's crazy, all kinds of stuff filling my bag with all kinds of imports, and just having a good old time. Walked up to the counter, found a magazine there, kind of cheesy newsprint type deal, and looked at it, you know, and on it was this character drawing of this guy in corpse paint. All right, so I looked at it. It was called Petrified Zine. Now, the significance of this would greatly impact Savior Sect's future, because this right here was the key to a new underground that was maybe started a couple years before this. This would have been late in '94, but would affect us '95 and beyond. So I picked this up, being a fan of the '80s black metal scene, really into Venom and Merciful Fate and Celtic Frost and Bathory and Onslaught and all these bands like that. Were really into that type of thing at that time. This really grabbed my attention. Went through, saw some kind of something happening here just by reading through the pages of this magazine, which I purchased. Spent a bunch of nights there looking through this stuff, wondering how I could get my hands on some of these demos that were worldwide with this weird new black metal thing starting. And I remember one of the first things I purchased was a vinyl single from a band called Gehenna, and it was called Angel Wings and Raven Claws. Okay, and this was just a cheesy 7-inch record. And I listened to the song, and it kind of just kind of catchy, really cool tune. Had this keyboards kicking in repetitively through the song, dun, 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 dun. And I was thinking how neat that made the record sound, how full that made these kind of almost not very complex riffs, not very complex melody, but very catchy, particularly for a black metal song. And when the keyboards just kicked in, it added this new dimension to the music that I had not thought about. And I thought, well, maybe if Savior Sect does that, we can really add that dimension to it, because I really love the fullness of sound. And all that did was kind of follow the guitars, and I'd be kind of like, well, it's not going to take a long or a lot of effort to throw that in. So again, we had an 8-track recorder here, and we had 8 tracks to work with, and I really wanted to use one of those tracks to throw down these keyboards. So the question still was the guitar, and I had to move fast with this because Anastasia being a distance away, and I didn't want there to be a big chasm between these guys leaving and Savior Sect breaking up and me coming up with new songs. So I had to do this quick. I had to move fast. There was one solution for it. I decided to tackle the 6-string, and I had never played 6-string ever. And I had a 6-string, but I never was proficient with it. And it became really pressing to me to get these songs done. So I threw two songs together. They were Emotional Execution was the first, and Death at a Urinal was the second. So we kind of had a one kind of neo-goth track coming in here, and we had another kind of just straight Savior Sect punk style song. So I kind of wanted to account for each one when I threw these songs together. Picking up the 6-string Strange didn't have a lot of effects pedals, didn't have a lot of equipment for the guitar, but I went ahead and I put these songs down. I wrote the lyrics for them, called Anastasia. I said, look, I have two new Savior Sect songs. You gotta come down, give it a chance. I got an 8-track recorder. I put us, we're gonna have, this is gonna be good. This is gonna be a good release. We got all these tracks, and I was singing her a song and dance, and all the while my confidence was just shaken at the foundation because of the guitar parts and just difficult stuff. Really a trial going on in my mind, because when she came down I didn't know what she was going to think of this stuff, and it was important to me that she liked this so that we could continue and I can continue working with her. So anyway, as it happened, she did come down and we did record the songs. Now, how we did this is I felt on the because we were working just with 2 tracks as far as reel-to-reel tape, there was no ability to overdub. I always, when it was still to this day, when I listen to those tracks, very rehearsal, very dry, very punk type thing. The vocals are very not very full, only because she had 1 track. It kind of has that live feel, which it was. I felt with working with 8 tracks, we could really add depth to the sound of the vocals, as well as add those keyboards, which would add further depth to it. So we ended up tracking her vocals 3 times, because we had the drums didn't take up any tracks. It was 1 drum track. So and all it did was just give us a 4 count. And the bass was, the songs at this point still being written on bass. What I would do is I'd write the bass. It was the recording process here, or the writing process, was very similar to the previous 2 demos. The songs were kind of written on bass with the drums and practiced and then put down onto the tape. And then my job would be to try my hardest to work in the 6-string with what little equipment I had with that, and with what little talent I had at playing the 6-string. So there's a marked shift guitar-wise from the first 2 demos to the 3rd demo. And it didn't help us that I, at this point, was still writing very structured, traditional song structured pieces, very verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus type stuff. And it really suffered rhythm-wise. What I found myself doing was kind of listening into the bass and drums and getting a feel. Plus, I usually, not so sure exactly if I did it this way, going back to 95, a long distance away, but chances are I wrote, I had a song title when I would start the songs. That's usually how I begin my writing process. I'll come up with a concept, a song title, a concept of visuals in my head, almost runs like a movie through my head. Try to fit the atmosphere of the song to the concept or song title. So I found myself more or less kind of futzing, I guess, around on the doing more overlay type stuff and occasional power chord coming in here and there, and it came out very strange, very thin. Occasionally, again, I was used to playing bass, which is on 4 strings, so I didn't understand the relationship so well of the 2 high strings. So I would often hit wrong notes on there and add that special something to the songs. And but anyway, kind of putting strange, and I had the only effects pedal I had, I believe, was I might have had like a delay pedal or a compressor, and I would combine these pedals to try to get some kind of sound out of them, but basically strange overlays on just going completely by the feel of the bass, almost kind of counterplaying off of the rhythm section, because I had no idea what I was doing with the 6 string. I was lost with it, and did my best to just kind of mainly use the top 4 strings as on the bass and just kind of wing my way through this. Now the interesting part was putting the keyboards down, which I actually really liked. Kind of thought that because the guitar part was very almost ethereal or very thin sounding over the rest of it, these keyboard overlays did add some dimension to the music. However, again, I was working very quickly on this demo, and I never really got the chance to sit down and learn how to use the recorder really well, and as a result, I made a lot of mistakes in the recording of Story in Your Eyes. The bass track got recorded on multiple tracks, and I couldn't get it off, so when I went to mix it, the bass was always loud, and it was very haphazard type of thing. The sound quality was really awful. I kind of remember, kind of kicking myself because, we had these reel-to-reel recordings for the previous 2 demos, and here we had this really nice piece of equipment with multiple tracks and all 9 yards, and it sounded much worse than the 2 rehearsal tapes did, which was much to my detriment, because I really was hoping that we could capitalize on some good sound with this thing. And in recent years, I have redone these tapes the best that I can, and have gotten them a lot better than back in the day, but very disappointed with the sound quality of the demo. Songs, some songs on Story in Your Eyes had potential to be good songs. I just think because of the circumstances, both the ineptness at utilizing the equipment and the ineptness in playing the guitar parts, some of it actually, when I listen back to it, it kind of works on a kind of some charm to what I was doing there, but on a whole, very ineffective due to lack of equipment as well, aside from the lack of 6-string talent. Just a very pivotal piece, coming from one world of a full band with a degree of talent to one guy having to learn to do many things on a technical level and on a musical level. And but Anastasia and I did finish the demo, and we decided to get the covers made up this time. We went to this was kind of pre having like a lot of people having home computers with programs that do all this stuff. So we decided to go to a print shop for this one, and I think it was mainly on my end to do this because I wanted to convince her that this stuff was a good demo, and I felt that if it was aesthetically better looking, that she would be more happy with this. And again, there were some songs on Story in Your Eyes that came through and held the pieces together. I think both of us were at the time. I remember being happy with Gates of Winter, song with some potential. I remember her being really happy with Awaiting Funeral Winds, and so there was enough there. I remember Among the Flowers being a song that we were both happy with. There was enough there to hold interest for us, and feel like we had accomplished something. I don't remember us being particularly disappointed with the demo. I was sound-wise and guitar-wise. Now Anastasia at this point was not a musician, so I don't think she was able to really read into the guitar work on the record as much as I was. So I think she heard the atmospheres and liked the keyboard parts, and I think it again, I felt if we put the whole thing together as a more professional package, I felt that would really boost the ego of the band. Now, again, I was becoming more and more immersed in this new underground movement story. I was kind of buying more things, receiving more flyers through the mail at this point, and really, getting in touch with other bands and such. And the whole thing seemed to be hinged around the metal scene. And I wasn't really sure how people were going to respond to the music of Savior Sect. Now, I was consciously aware of that the original two demos were probably not going to work out well within this scene. So I was, during the writing of Story in Your Eyes, I was hearing more and more of this keyboard-driven metal, and a lot of it tried to capture atmospheres, and I really felt that we may have had a common ground with the underground just through atmospheres. I felt the keyboards really were going to help because keyboards really popular back then in the mid-90s. Keyboards to set synth work to set atmospheres, and I really felt that we were moving along the right track with this. Now, fortunately, because Anastasia and I lived at such a distance, we didn't get together every day to work out music. So this freed me up for a lot of time to sit down and work with the 8-track recorder. So through '95, I really tried to sit back and learn all the intricacies of this of the recorder, and in doing so, I began to work on some metal type stuff. I mean, because I really wanted to somehow be part of this new underground scene that was going on at that time. Lots of craziness going on with the murders and all this hype going on surrounding the whole Norwegian scene, and it just became, very, kind of like sitting down, morbid entertainment to soak in. And of course, this was catching the attention of a young guy back then who was into all this whole dark movement thing. So I started working out more metal type stuff. Though I couldn't play guitar, I was really sad at that time that Omen wasn't around, or even Kane from God, very metal oriented players at that point in time. And I found myself still not really grabbing the metal thing, the guitar thing too, as well, as far as being able to play metal. Didn't have the ability to do that. So even in the metal stuff, working with strange type of overlays, realized very soon that I needed more equipment, because I went back as a guy. Now I considered myself to be a guitar player on the 6-string. I went back, listened to Omen from Apostle Void and what Kane was doing in God, and particularly what Dexter was doing in Savior Sect. I realized the effects on the guitar were half the battle to doing things. So I realized very soon enough that I needed other effects to really make this guitar work. So in the meantime, also while working on the metal stuff, which would become Cult of the Lizard God material, which was a side project I was working on then. I believe starting with Enchanted, I began working with improv. What I would do would be have the drum machine, lay down the drum machine track, establish the tempo pattern that I wanted, and I would, instead of sitting and writing out songs like a verse, chorus thing, I found that I was able to almost incorporate it like a pseudo jazz type of feel, and I would just improvise the bass over the drums in a non-repetitive fashion. It would just be a straight up improv through the whole song, where it never repeated itself. And then I would take the guitar, and I found myself, my abilities of guitar were growing in feel more so than perhaps in technical measures, of wrist action or stuff like that. I found myself being able to feel the rhythms of a song and kind of improv, usually multiple tracks of single note overlays, that kind of fit yet contrasted, like playing between the notes and using different effects. Really created a sound, and then what I tried to do then is hearkening back to our friends in Gehenna with Angel Wings and Raven Claws. I would put repeating keyboard parts and some non-repeating ones, and really try to make the keyboard the element that drew the song together as a whole, because the keyboard would repeat, whereas none of the other stuff would. And I found this created a very unique, creepy type of sound. And I recorded, I believe, a Not Anubis demo too, the same way, and did that more in a gothic mode. And that was all by myself, and like I said, we had time between the Savior Sect releases, so the the early on in '95 when we were working, you know, like dogs to finish up Story in Your Eyes. By the time '95 was coming to a close, I was really on to something else, and I bought an effects processor. I think shortly before the Not Anubis release, and I found once I had the effects processor, and then I improv'd everything with overlays, I found that I could get really cool sounds out of things, and the guitar became something that was very close to me then. After we did Story in Your Eyes, where the guitar was very far from me, almost like a awkward enemy in my hands. By the time we were ready to begin recording Echoes of the Decline, I really found a new friend in the guitar, and the sounds that I could get out of that guitar just through the wonders of improv. Alright, so that was pretty much how things progressed. I remember, as far as just, you know, some small details of Story in Your Eyes, I've always been a big UK Subs fan, and was always a collector of their colored vinyl that they would put out. They would each limited releases of different colored vinyls, and to this day I love colored vinyl. I mean, colored vinyl, just always wanted Savior Sect to have a colored vinyl something throughout the entire existence of the band. Ooh, excuse me. The best I could shoot for, since we weren't dealing with vinyl here, we were dealing with cassettes, I thought it would be neat to run the covers off of Story in Your Eyes in multiple colors. So I think there were seven different colors that we worked with, and I thought that was kind of the closest I could come to putting a UK Subs type thing together. So it would have limited editions of different colors, and one of those, the beige one, being the majority. So the most of Story in Your Eyes, the majority have beige covers, but then there's also these limited other cooler covers like pink and lime green and magenta and yellow and orange and so forth of these. Anyway, it's all the same cover, but it's just different color, printed on a different color. So yeah, pretty neat stuff. Remember the magenta going very quickly, because that was the coolest looking one. Everybody wanted a magenta one. That was in our small circle still at this point. Savior Sect not really reaching out its fingers at any point yet in time with this, and but all of our is sort of along the same lines as the previous two demos. Have been a small circle of friends we would give the stuff out to, and I remember the magenta going very quickly, and I don't even have any of those left anymore. But overall, with Story in Your Eyes, it was a demo that I did not heavily promote, only because I was kind of unhappy with the kind of amateur sound of it, the bad sound, the bad quality sound of it. Very unhappy with that type of sound. So I didn't push it very hard. Now, it was around this time that Anastasia, once the demo was finished, Anastasia started to get the bug of wanting to reorganize a band, because she was looking to do live type stuff. I remember the call of her anger, saying that she is really looking to want to play live and do the whole club circuit again, as we had been doing in the previous year with the 2 other demos. I was seeing this underground thing as the way to go. I was thinking that, you know, I can tackle the world with the underground, and I can get a few people to come to, you know, some local shows, and because again, you know, we played one show and given out some demo tapes to other clubs and to friends and such, so we weren't a band that was garnering a large following. So I really was looking more to this underground thing and kind of wanting to just become a recording project and to get away from having to deal with club owners and having to deal with the hassles of hauling equipment and rehearsing and dealing with other musicians, as we just had done, and we saw where that got us. And I kind of had a little anger in my heart about that, and then being, you know, kicked out of GOD sometime before that. So I really had a very negative opinion at this point of the live thing. I thought that because I felt close to Anastasia and wanted to get closer, I felt that the two of us, that I would really put my whole into the two of us. And that is where I wanted to take it. But being that, you know, she was asking me to put a band back together, I wasn't, and if this was going to be the hinge pin of me losing her, I went ahead and tried to do this again. It so happened that, which I knew it would, Dexter and Dave had falling out. Dexter into habits that I knew would lead to non-focus. So that project folded. So here it was that Dave was calling me again, as I remember, and we started to kind of hang out again. And it was a painful thing because we were friends when we started this, when we started Savior Sect. So we started practicing again in a storage garage that he was renting to practice his drums. And we started jamming some of the songs off of Story in Your Eyes, plus the older songs. I remember we did I can't remember the exact order of how everything happened, but we did end up playing a show with no guitar player. And I didn't want to do this. I was like, well, maybe we can get Dexter to fill in for one night to do this, because with his talent, he could just improv through all the new songs and it wouldn't even matter. It would be better than having no guitar at all. These guys were dead set on doing bass, drums, and vocals show. And I did it for Anastasia's sake. We got through that show. It was, you know, nothing, you know, the three-person, you know, lineup wasn't full. I mean, I think Savior Sect was one of those bands, especially since we had guitar and keyboards going now, was one of those bands that would needed that element to make the songs come forth. I mean, I think a lot of our atmospheres derive from the guitar, and more lately the keyboards, and I've just felt that bass and drums and vocals, it just fell flat for me. Plus we didn't play particularly well. We weren't well practiced. We kind of took the show on the fly. So I think it was after that we asked Kane from God to come down and hear us and perhaps put some guitar work down. And that did happen. And we got together a few times of Kane and me and Dave, and Dave's girlfriend actually played keyboards at some practices. We taught her these simple keyboard parts. I was pretty happy with that. Kane's guitar work, not just, the guy was metal or hard rock, a really good guitar player, but really miles away from what Savior Sect was about. So I was not so happy with it, but would have went on doing it. The fortunate thing about that whole event was that Anastasia, who cried and moaned to me about getting a live band together, when I finally did get one together, where we had a full piece thing, including the keyboards, she would not come down to practice. And I think we practiced a lot for a while, and there was never any vocals. And I confronted her about this, and she said that maybe it's a good idea if we just record. And after all the work I went through, I agreed with that. And I don't remember exactly how things fell there. I remember Dave was uncomfortable with his girlfriend playing keyboards, so the whole thing was kind of shaky anyway, and it wasn't, and again, Kane's guitar work was not really cut out for what we were doing, and I felt I could do a better job at this point in laying down the guitar work, and I don't think he would have been able to emulate my style of playing at this point. So there it was. I mean, lots going on during this period. Savior Sect became a recording band once and for all until the advent of 2003, but this again was 1995, and we decided recording, and I tried to convince her that this underground, at the beginning she didn't understand where I was going with this, but it soon became clear that we would have to go the route of the worldwide 90s underground, and Story in Your Eyes would not be the demo to do it with. So that brings us to Echoes of the Decline in 96, but that is another story. And next we're going to go through the songs that comprise Story in Your Eyes, Savior Sect's demo 95.